Lord Morley, on the face of it, this is good news. This is a reason people are celebrating in Tel Aviv, we've seen, and people are celebrating in Gaza. What are your thoughts?
Well, I try to put myself, and it's really hard, into the minds of the hostage families who have waited now 2 years for their loved ones to return, and the agony that they have been suffering, and the fact that this is so close now, that the few remaining, relatively few remaining living hostages may release, and others may get the sense of being able to start the process of closure and grieving by seeing that the bodies is enormously important. And then, yes, the devastation that has been seen in Gaza, I think there has been a growing sense in certainly, of course, across the world looking on from this, but most importantly within Israel, that this cannot go on without an endpoint. So enormously optimistic to get to the next stage. But then, look, as Mark says, there is so much complexity beyond that, and it's very clear this is an agreement for stage one, not for the long-term future of the region.
But astonishing that, I mean, we keep saying this cabinet meeting in Israel in the next 45 minutes, I mean, that could then ratify this and the bombs could stop. I mean, it's just the most remarkable moment. But to bring it back to this country for a second, every Saturday we've seen protests and marches. Many people on those marches, of course, will have the purest of hearts, will be upset by the images of devastation in Gaza. But many people that they march alongside will have hatred in their hearts and have expressed the most vile forms of anti-Semitic abuse. There is a protest now planned for this Saturday that is going full steam ahead, whether or not there is a ceasefire.
Yeah.
I'm just struggling to think, what are they protesting for? Or indeed, what are they protesting against if the war ends?
Yeah, they are, and exactly so. The motivation of many of those who have organised and driven the protests and been angriest and loudest in their condemnation, this has not actually been about ending a conflict. It's been about ending Israel, which they believe is an abhorrence and are deeply opposed to the idea of legitimacy for that state, and are very happy for that to spill out into intimidation of Jewish people. It was instructive to read the advertisement put out by this new party started by Jeremy Corbyn, that they were saying, we will go on with these until the occupation ends, and actually including really, in a really sinister way, the red triangle, which has come to signify support for Hamas. This is a really dark moment, and it underlines why the government needs to make a genuine commitment to the country and towns who've been affected by this, but Jewish people who have been intimidated, that they will take the power to stop marches in these circumstances, not simply put conditions on them, which is only as far as they've gone at the moment.
I've got many Jewish friends who are concerned, again, about the march going on this weekend, given the fact that we seem to be on the verge of what people were campaigning for. And they are worried that this is very little to do with the people of Palestine and everything to do with simply hating Jewish people. Yeah,
that's always been an underlying current within the anti-Israel movement, which has infected the parts of the left in the country as well as the far right. It's been a decades-long thing, but what you've seen since 7th of October is that underlying hatred and intolerance has exploded onto the surface. People have become much bolder. When the Community and Security Trust, with a group that works so hard to protect Jewish people, Jewish communities in Britain, they make the point, they track anti-Semitic incidents, and they make the point that the biggest spike in those anti-Semitic incidents came on the 7th of of October and the day after on the 8th. So before any Israeli response, and it was about people feeling emboldened and a sense of joy that there had been this horrific attack on Israel.
I mean, we've seen some of the posts by some of the people on these marches, but some media figures as well.
Sure.
On the 7th of October, celebrating the slaughter of over 1,000 Jewish people, just the most staggering response. Those protests organised before Gaza was invaded. And these protests now planning to go on after the invasion withdraws. It makes you think that these Gaza protests aren't actually about Gaza as a primary cause. Mark White still in the studio with us. What's the government saying about these protests?
Well, on the issue of wider protests, we know, of course, that they are passing the legislation to be able to make it tougher for repeat protests if they bring with them problems and disruption for communities. But that doesn't mean they're just going to ban protests willy-nilly if they decide that it's not conducive to the public good. Some might like to see that, but that's not going to happen as yet. The hope has to be, at least if we do get a more meaningful peace process being embarked on now in that region, and as I have to say, we've got to constantly caveat this with we're only at the very first step here, a long road to go. We've seen many false dawns before when it comes to the Israeli-Palestine conflict. But if we get a more meaningful peace process, it's got to be hoped that that might take some of the heat out of it, although only some of the heat, because we've got another issue, and we've got to be frank about this as well. We've seen with the influx of mass migration with many people from that part of the world, from the Middle East, that take with them many of the resentments that many hold within that region towards Israel, and that can inflame the situation as well. So it's not just those on the left that might hold these traditional sort of anti-Israeli views. There are many more people in this country than there were just a few years ago from that part of the world.
And that's so strange, because we think of this as a distant conflict, thousands of miles away, but actually it's a conflict that is playing out on our streets, in our cities.
If I may, yes. And that sense of a foreign conflict being imported here is just one of the things that I think makes the majority of British people despair for the state of the country when it brings so much intimidation. And Mark's right. Hopefully, let's hope that Mark is right, that you might see the anger dissipate somewhat, but the crucial thing now, after the appalling murders, Islamist murders of the Jewish people outside the synagogue in Manchester, is that the Prime Minister makes good on his promise to do whatever it takes to make the country safe for Jewish people, and that means tackling the Islamist extremism, which has been embedded in too many pockets of our communities. It's not enough just to allow the heat to go out of this and then go back to how we were. This sustained action is what is critically important now.
John, very, very quickly and finally, we're even seeing this attitude within our hospitals, within the NHS.
Yeah.
People not just sort of like, strong Islamist views in our hospitals. What do you make of that? Yeah,
it's truly frightening, and I think it's important always to point out that when we're talking about Islamists, it's a very different thing to the Muslim people of the Muslim faith who we welcome into our hospitals, of course. Well done to Wes Streeting for saying that those people must not be allowed to work in the NHS. But again, look, it's important and necessary for a government minister to say that. What we need to see is them keeping the eye on the ball to make sure that that can actually happen, and that anyone that expresses those kind of anti-Semitic views is not allowed to take taxpayers' money and put potentially Jewish patients at risk when they come to be treated.
Lord Warney, thanks indeed for being here in the studio with us, and indeed to Mark White too.